Hello, everyone. I am so honored to be here with you all today. I want to start off with a quick show of hands. Who here has had an idea and wanted to make something before? OK, so pretty much everyone. And who here has actually done it? OK, actually, good for you guys. Thing is that if I were to sit down with any one of you, that you'd probably say that you didn't make it because you lacked the money or the skills, or you simply just didn't know where to start. And I can confidently say that I get it, because once upon a time, I was there too. And so today, I'd like to share with you two things. First is my journey from doubts to success. And second are my 4 crucial strategies to making something you have no idea how to make. And like any true ADHDer telling a story, I'm going to start at the end and then go back to the beginning and then stop along the way to introduce key points to the narrative. But don't worry, I took my medication, so it shouldn't be too hard to follow. And on that note, hi, I'm Mike. I'm one of 2 co-founders at WorkLouder, a hardware company I started on the internet with a complete stranger. And his name is Mattia. Mattia, say hi. Say hi. Hi. Together, we took $2,000 and a handful of renders and turned it into one of the fastest growing bootstrap startups in the indie tech market today. With over 500,000 followers across our socials and a range of unique products designed for creators, and some pretty cool collaborations, one of which you might recognize. But before we were doing that, 3 years ago, we were just 2 guys with an idea. And before you think we were fancy ex-Apple employees or had connections in the business, let me tell you, it was really not like that. I myself have a bachelor's degree in pharmacology, which is the study of drugs. And Mattia is a graphic designer who self-taught himself 3D modeling at the start of COVID. And our first product that we launched, the Creator Board, was never intended on actually being a real product, because Mattia had designed it as a sort of practice to learn 3D modeling to begin with when he found himself unemployed at the start of COVID and was now a freelancer. And so he was like, OK, I'm going to design a tool that's going to help me be more efficient. And for him, efficiency was more than just about utility. It was about the aesthetic and the feel of the product. The idea being, if you're at play while you're at work, you're going to do better work, because who doesn't want to be playing when they're at work? And so after many hours of YouTube tutorials of learning Rhino and Keyshot, he came up with this render. And it was the first render of his I had ever laid my eyes upon as a simple follower of the Instagram page at the time. And it's with this render our story all began. And it's where I would also like to introduce the first crucial strategy to making something that you don't know how to make: mindset. Because can't is something we tell ourselves. You see, back in 2020, when I first came across this render, I didn't know that it was not a real product, but I couldn't stop thinking about how this thing was going to help me be more efficient and make my work more fun. It just seemed just too attractive to let go. And so I just had to have it. And I followed the Instagram page religiously for 6 months until finally I couldn't take it anymore, and I reached out to the page to ask to jump on a Zoom call to find out when they were going to launch it, because I didn't want to miss this pre-order, because I always would and would never get this thing. And that's when I found out that Mattia was quietly telling himself no, and was worried about launching this thing all by himself because he had never launched it before. And you see, as creators, we sometimes get in our heads and tell ourselves this, just because insert your reason here. There's always a reason why not to do that thing of yours. And it's the reason why there are so many perfectionists in today's day and age, because perfect is never done, and if it's not done, then you can't be judged. But sometimes we just need somebody to push us out of that cycle and show us that we're closer to that goal than we think we are. And that's what my goal was when I told Mattia I would write him a launch strategy for free just so that I could get one of his keyboards one day. And the thing is, though, is that I knew nothing about the mechanical keyboard world. Like, nothing. But I still wanted to somehow justify the last 4 years I had spent building my last 2 startups, one in education and the other one in vodka. Like I said, no experience with hardware. But I learned a lot about building a business and launching things, and I just wanted somebody to make use of this information that I had. And so I just couldn't watch Mattia get so close to realizing his dream and then just walking away from it. And so, armed with a few days and the promise at the front of a spot at the front of the line for this new keyboard, I got to work creating a launch strategy for him, a very simple one, and it was based around positioning, pricing, and promotion. Most importantly, I needed to do it all with a $0 budget because that was one of the constraints that Mattia had, saying, listen, I don't have the money to invest in this fancy keyboard, so I got to work creating it. I started with positioning. There were all of these people in his comments saying, where can I buy this keyboard? How much is it? All asking to get it, but who are these people and why did they want it so bad? So what I did is I stalked them all on social media because you can find out a lot by doing that. And it turns out most of these people were graphic designers, photo editors, video editors, and they are all asking where to buy this product. And so by that information, I understood that Mattia needed to position himself not as a keyboard brand, but rather as a brand for creatives that just so happened to be selling keyboards. So with the positioning figured out, I moved on to pricing. And while I was Googling, I came across this brand called KeyCult, and they were hosting what's known as a Victory auction. Never heard of that before, but they were hosting this kind of auction that was going to help them figure out how much to sell their premium keyboards for. And upon further inspection, I found out that people were willing to pay upwards of $1,600 for a keyboard. And I thought that surely that's a mistake because you can just go down to Best Buy and grab one for 30 bucks and be done with it, right? But people were not only willing to pay that much for a keyboard that hadn't been built yet, they were willing to pay $1,600 for a keyboard they themselves were going to have to build, and it didn't even come with some of the most important pieces like these switches and keycaps. That's like the equivalent of going to a high-end car dealership, buying the most expensive car, and then when it arrives, you not only have to assemble it yourself, but you have to buy the seats and tires separately. Crazy, but people were willing to do that. And so all to say, I now knew how Mattia was going to figure out the price point for his keyboard. He was just going to host this thing called a Victory auction and take the average of the bids. Easy peasy. But I think the easiest part was actually promotion, because all I wrote in that section was, keep doing what you're doing, because clearly it's working. And with that done, we jumped on another Zoom call, and I presented this plan to him. And even though I had zero intentions of joining Work Louder as a partner, as anything else other than a fan, by the end of that call, I was actually 50-50 owners in a hardware company with no experience building hardware. And just like that, we had the plan, the design, and probably the perfect mix of talent and delusional confidence, all in one team. Which leads me to my second strategy. Be delusional, except when it comes to money. So on day one of our partnership, we needed to move quickly from the conceptual stage to concrete action. And you'd think that means by advancing on production, marketing, and distribution all very quickly from the start, because they're all very important when launching something. But in reality, we just need to figure out one important part about the production before we started. And that was, can we sell this thing for more than we could make it? Because after all, I had no experience making keyboards, neither did Mattia, and we had even less experience building a hardware company. So that was one of the challenges starting off, and we needed to consider the fact that our sale price also needed to account for more than just the production of this keyboard, which included things like our mistakes, our future developments, everything right down to the Wi-Fi. Because if you don't, then you might find yourself in a tough spot. So what I did first was I took all of the design files that we had, and I went straight to Google to find suppliers. And contrary to what you might think, thinking that I might need to find one manufacturer to build it all, because that would probably be the easiest way to do this. I found individual manufacturers for each part, because if I found one and there was a problem with the keyboard itself, I would need to start from zero if I decided to switch manufacturers. So instead, I found individual suppliers for each part. That way, if there was a problem, which, trust me, there were, we'd be able to keep the momentum and keep better control over the quality of our end product. And that's ultimately how we brought this keyboard from knowing nothing to, in 8 months, shipping it out to customers. And before you ask, yes, it really is as simple to find manufacturers as just going to Google, typing in custom plastic mold manufacturers, and hitting enter. It's not that complicated. And so once we had a good idea of the production cost, we needed to determine how much people were actually willing to pay for this thing. And that's where that weird Vickery auction that I had mentioned earlier comes into play. We had told all of our 1,200 followers at the time, it really was that number, that we were going to give our first 10 keyboards as these pioneer keyboards. They were going to be called pioneer boards, and they were going to be the first 10. All they needed to do to win one was bid their highest amount in the auction that they would be willing to pay, and then honor it if they were one of the top 10 bids. And so after only 2 months of being involved in the company, we launched our first ever silent auction. And these were the results, where you can see in green the top 10 bids, and then in the table on the other side, you can see the stats about the auction, one of which was the average sales price. And so we ended up determining objectively how much to sell this keyboard because our community picked it for us, essentially. But once we figured out that, then we now knew that if we sold over 65 keyboards, we would not only cover the production cost of the boards and the molds, but it also gave us a target to shoot above. Because the worst thing to do in any kind of physical product business is buy too much inventory, because then if you can't sell it, you're kind of stuck. And even though we had figured all that out, it still didn't quite solve how we were going to go from render to reality. And that's where I'd like to talk about my third strategy. Sort your problems and train, trust, and trade your way to the solution. Here's what I mean by that. Whenever I get stuck on trying to figure out a problem of ours, I take a step back and see if I'm addressing it in the proper way. And this is what I mean by that. All of your problems can and must fit onto one of these 3 paths, either the train, trust, or trade path. So let's dive in and see what I mean by that. So path number 1, train. Idea here is pretty simple. Can I train myself to do the thing, whatever it may be? For instance, when we started Work Louder, we had no money, which meant we didn't have any money to hire a photographer or content creator to help promote our keyboards for us, which meant I needed to do it, even though I was anything but an influencer on my own socials. I think I had like 300 followers or something. And like any desperate brother would, I begged my little sister to help teach me the ways of the Gen Zs. And so we started getting to make content together. And we made content of all types because we had no idea what would actually work. And if it worked, we leaned into it and created more content like that. And if it didn't, we just chalked it up to it being a test. And that way, our egos didn't get wrapped up in it, and we didn't feel bad. It was just data. And after posting almost daily now for 3 years, we have countless videos with millions of views on it. And best of all, we did it for almost $0 because we just used one of these. And so sometimes you can't just train yourself how to do the thing, and so you might need to take a different path, like path number 2, trust. Can I trust my team to handle this for me while I do something else? So while my little sister and I were working on building a vibrant community on social media, Mattia was left with all of the design problems, everything from the website to the industrial design of our products. Thing is that if you remember, Mattia is not a classically trained industrial designer, which was a little bit of a problem when I asked him originally if our molds, if our keycaps were ready to be sent to production so we could create these molds. To which he told me, Mike, I've never done this before, so I have no idea if this is going to work. And that's when we found out the hard way that our manufacturers overseas would be happy to make anything for us, even if it was riddled with mistakes. And so I'll never forget when we got those first samples back and plopped them onto our keyboard, they sprung off the keyboard like some cheap 90s board game because our tolerances were all off. Yeah, I earned some gray hair over here for that one. But that being said, once we had figured out those design challenges, we then were able to produce quality technical files and quality renders for marketing all in-house, which made our power duo super powerful. But that being said, if your team member can't handle something that you need done, you might need to take the third path, which is trade. Can I trade something of value? And so, yes, you could trade money to get what you need done, like when we hired a dude off of Fiverr to make our circuit boards. I mean, 1,000 5-star reviews can't be wrong, right? They can't all be wrong. But sometimes you need to be creative and actually offer something of not monetary value to get what you need done. And that's something that we needed to do for these Figma renders. And Ben, the previous speaker, is someone that we ended up trading to get this job done. And we ended up trading him the opportunity to build his dream keyboard with us and make it profitable and live out a hardware experience all of his own. And so the idea here is really you just need to match a need. You need to match two needs together, and you need to look for that opportunity to get what you need done. And so that leads me to my fourth and final strategy, look for opportunity. Because things are going to go wrong, use it to your advantage. Every time I thought that we were going to have the last problem solved and it was all going to be good, life would cook up something even more problematic and interesting and ship it our way. I will never forget holiday season 2022 because it was the first time ever Mattia was coming to Canada, and it was the first time ever that we were going to be doing an in-stock sale of our keyboards. And I had invited him to my parents' house where we were building all of these things to stay with us. It was a big deal for us because we had essentially put all of our eggs in one basket, spending over $120,000 worth of product to do this big in-stock sale. And when we got our keyboards from the manufacturer, they were perfect, except for one little thing. Instead of the boards being matte black like we had asked for, they were gray. And being in a room full of designers, you probably know that gray does not equal black, which is what I tried explaining to my manufacturer on the phone later that day, saying, listen, we have some of the most, let's call them detail-oriented people on the planet as our customers, and surely they would notice if we shipped them a gray keyboard instead of a black one like we promised. And our manufacturer was so apologetic, saying, don't worry, Michael, we're going to fix this, we're going to make it all right, don't you worry at all. And I was like, okay, great. What's the solution going to be? And she was like, okay, on your next order, we're going to give you 10% off, but on this one, there's absolutely nothing we can do for you. I'm not going to lie, I cried. Because all of this product that we had ordered had taken months to produce, everyone had already paid for it, and they paid for a black keyboard. And probably worst of all, we needed to be shipping these in less than 2 weeks. So, distraught as I was, I called up the people closest to me and had them pitch me their best ideas. Some of them said, just call up your customers and tell them that you're going to refund them. Others said, ship it and maybe they won't notice. And a few of them said, well, why don't you just spin this into a limited edition? I mean, it's a different color already, just call it something else. And having not really liked the first two options, I said, limited edition doesn't sound so bad. So the following day, I called up my cousin, and we did a crazy fast photo shoot in his condo lobby to get content around this new edition we are calling the Fallout Edition, because it quite literally felt like somebody had dropped a bomb on us, and we were now dealing with the fallout. And to help sell the extra inventory that we had, my little sister, who was showing me how to make TikToks, created 4 unique TikToks for us to post to drum up some hype. And day after day, we posted them, and day after day, they flopped. Which was surprising to us because they were trending video, they're trending sounds, using great photos and behind the scenes, and we thought for sure one of these would work. And they just didn't. So on the 4th day, we decided to make a video that just leaned straight into the problem that we were dealing with and said, you know what, we're just going to send it. And this is what that video was. And just like that, Christmas was saved due to a simple video and my little sister. And because of that video, we not only sold all of the extra inventory that we had purchased for that holiday season, we got 94% of pre-order backers to switch to the Fallout edition because at that point it was so hyped as this mistake batch, and everyone wanted to be a part of it. And just like my sister was there for me then, she's actually here for me today in the audience with you guys. So please give it up for my little sister, who has always been there for me. Thank you, so. All right, so let's wrap this up. 3 years ago, I was broke and started a hardware company with a complete stranger on the internet. And today, I'm proud to say that we have a whole lineup of products for creators that we're proud to call our own. And we get to wake up excited every day to build the future of tech with our community. And that's a future of products that are not only thoughtfully designed for their end users, but ones that are fun and inspiring to use as well. And if there's anything that I could accomplish here today, it would be to convince one of you guys out there that your idea is worth following too, and that you just might be one post, comment, or Zoom call away from your big break. So let's recap what you're going to need. Number 1, positive self-talk, because can't is something we tell ourselves, and that barrier that you're perceiving is most likely just up here. Number 2, be delusional, except when it comes to money, because you'll need it to keep your dream alive. Number 3, sort your problems. No matter how complicated that problem might seem, you can always train, trust, or trade your way to that solution. And number 4, look for opportunity, because when life gives you lemons, make a TikTok about your lemonade stand. I want to leave you with one final note. The people who create some of the most impressive things in today's world are not the smartest people. They're just the people who tried. Thank you.